Okay, I think so. It's sharp 11 p.m. I think we are due to start this power webinar. Uh, all our participants, welcome to this power webinar. Thanks for registering. So let's start. This webinar is going to be of 30 minutes. First 20 minutes, we will have a Q&A session with our guest speaker. And last 10 minutes, we will have the time reserved for all of you to ask your questions. Okay. So let's start. Thank you. Okay, so our topic for today is cookie depreciation and its impact on marketers. We have with us our first guest speaker, Vaasu Gavarasana, who is also the Chief Digital Officer of Royal Sundaram General Insurance. Vasu comes up with this long history of being a very great digital marketer and a martech practitioner in Asia. Before Royal Sundaram, he has worked with brands like Yahoo as the chief of their business marketing for Asia Pacific region and brands like AXA and IG in Asia Pacific. Next is our moderator Vishal Sukeja, who is our product head at FirstHive. Before FirstHive, he has worked with brands like Tata Communications, DirectEye, and Avitus. So here on, I would hand over the charge to Vishal, who is our moderator for the event. Yes, Vishal.
All right. Thanks, Namrata. So good morning, all. Thanks for being here. And personally, for me, it's an absolute privilege to be speaking with Vaasu today, given his vast and relevant experience in the field. So thanks much, Vaasu, for being here. And thanks to all for joining us. Now, third-party cookies have essentially been the cornerstone of retargeting as well as of behavioral profile enhancement for brands since as long as I could remember. And the programmatic advertising ecosystem, of which obviously Google forms a very key part, has made a very significant announcement about deprecation of these third-party cookies on its Chrome browser. And obviously, Apple via Safari has also, via the ITP regulations, been rolling out a lot of enhancements there in terms of how do they look at managing not just third, but even first-party cookies for that matter. And this in itself is so very interesting because between Google and Apple, we are basically talking about two players which have over 80% market share when it comes to desktop browsers. So very interesting times ahead. There are a lot of articles that all of us kind of have been reading, I'm sure, that the sun is setting on third-party cookies. And in this webinar, with Vasu's help, we'll hope to answer a few questions that's definitely in my mind, and I'm sure in a lot of marketeers' minds as well who are on the call today. Starting off with, how do you think, Vaasu, this will impact business and marketing in general?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. I think, let's just roll back a bit and try to understand why do we need third-party cookies, right? And what role does the third-party cookie play in our advertising efforts, right? So I think increasingly over the last 10 years in digital marketing, personalization is a mantra we've been chasing. And in order to achieve personalization, which we have still a long way to go, third-party cookies provided additional data input into our analytics engines or CDP, as we've seen over the years, to stitch together a persona or a customer profile. And that's the role that third-party cookies. But third-party cookies alone don't give us a full picture of the consumer. So what is going to be impacted? Number one, remarketing will get impacted, will not disappear, but get impacted. Our ability to, like I said, stitch a persona has to change because there's a large dependency on third-party cookies. On desktop, especially, any advertising which is desktop-based will get also impacted. So a lot of these third-party cookies are actually used by publishers. So those publishers will no longer have targeting abilities, and they themselves have to rely on first-party sources, whether it is a Facebook or a Google. So it will be an interesting dynamic between different publishers having to interact with GAFA, which is Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. So those are the impact in terms of the for the marketeers like us. Okay.
Now, so does this mean that programmatic would die, or it will evolve into kind of taking a new form? What's your opinion on that?
Programmatic is not dependent on third-party cookies. Programmatic has a much larger role to play, but in the short term, it will get impacted. And I think Google has given us a 2-year heads up. And I think it's enough time to figure out another way to do programmatic. I think programmatic can flourish with first-party data, first-party cookie, which is, I think, increasingly, as I said, GAFA is increasingly becoming dominant. And I think there is a rich opportunity to do programmatic with first-party data and first-party cookies. So no, it won't die.
Okay. Now, that's interesting because I think between the GAFA that you kind of called out has more than 93% of all the digital ad revenues combined today, as per one of the recent reports I had read. So why do you think a company like, let's maybe just take one of those as an example here for the purpose of this webinar, why do you think a company like Google would try doing this? Because what is the need for the change?
I think there are 3 drivers making a company like Google do this. I think number one is they have to catch up with their competitors. Apple has already done it. In fact, Apple has just made an announcement yesterday on the next version of privacy protection actions. Firefox has already done this. And Firefox is interesting because Firefox is powered by tech community. It's a lot of crowdsourcing, people who are self-motivated to govern the internet. So I think there's industry peer pressure to do it. The third one, of course, there are laws. California has a privacy law. Europe has GDPR. India has also a law on privacy. I think that's one of the factors. And the last one, I think, which is also important, that from a revenue perspective, the dependency on first-party data will become even more important, because with the die-off of third-party cookies and the data that comes from it, marketeers will become more and more dependent on first-party sources, be it Google, Facebook, the GAFA, basically. And so therefore, Google's revenue will go up as a result.
But in a way, this is kind of creating a new monopoly of sorts then, because it's kind of cutting off all the different third-party sources that potentially a marketer had leverage on, and they will like the walled gardens. Basically, the walls are kind of going up higher. Don't you think so?
Correct, absolutely. So GAFA, in their own ways, right? Each one of them are creating a walled garden. Apple, of course, is the most famous walled garden of all, and Google is following through. Because I guess at some point of time, the performance volume will cannot continuously to grow at the rate it's growing. Every product has a life cycle, right? And I think ahead of the life cycle, they're trying to see how do they prolong the revenue sustainability. And if the dependency on the data becomes even more, and then that can become a longer sustaining revenue game.
Makes sense. So let's talk about Royal Sundaram and you specifically there. So what are you doing with respect to kind of managing this change better for your organization? If you could shed some light on that.
Sure. So I think, when I took over about 9 months ago, I think the first decision that we made is to be mobile first. When you make a mobile first strategy, automatically third-party cookies are not so relevant. Not that mobile devices don't accept cookies. They do accept cookies, but the mobile ecosystem is much more complex than your desktop environment, because each app is a walled garden in itself. So each app, of course, has first-party, third-party cookies inside them, but they don't cross-reference each other. And then you have mobile browser. So each within the mobile is a walled garden itself. So third-party cookies have very little role to play. It's predominantly a first-party data game. And mobile devices in themselves have fingerprints because of the device ID and behavior that comes within each ecosystem, whether you go to a Apple OS system or a Chrome/Google environment, comes with its own So going back to, so when we made a mobile first strategic move, the third-party cookie problem was automatically taken care of. Now, at the time we made the decision, we were not aware of the move that Google was about to make. We were aware of the decisions that Firefox and Apple had made, but we did not make the mobile first strategy as a response to third-party cookies. We did that because our audience is 80-20. 80% of our audience is on mobile and 20% is on desktop. It's only natural that we had to respond to that consumer data, right, to be able to serve those people coming to us on the mobile.
Got it. So from that perspective, this move may not necessarily have that great an impact for at least brands like yours, which are, let's say, either kind of going mobile first or don't necessarily have too much reliance on third-party cookies.
Correct. By having made a decision to go mobile first, that was automatically taken care of. We've also deepened our data capabilities. Our MarTech stack, we have significantly added a lot of depth to our MarTech stack. And the last one being a CDP, of course, with you guys. And I think we do have Adobe Analytics. I won't go into the whole list of the MarTech stack that we have. I think the decision of having a CDP was not, again, because of third-party cookies disappearing. We made a decision to buy a CDP because we wanted an enriched persona environment. We want to do segmentation going forward, and we want to do segmentation a little bit more sophisticated than just doing demographic segmentation, which most of us end up doing because that's the data that's usually and easily available. Age, city, gender are the default segment. But we want to go beyond just that and start doing introducing psychographic elements into the persona, and therefore you do need a tool like a CDP to be able to do that. We just got the journey started. I think going back to the decision that we made early on as a strategy, overall strategy, I think has helped us, fortunately has helped us not having to have a knee-jerk reaction to the third-party cookie disappearing.
Okay, so it's interesting you actually mentioned CDPs in there. So I think my logical next question obviously would be that what role do you think a CDP can potentially play, or a customer data platform can essentially play to help marketeers kind of reduce the brunt that they would face because of such a decision by these publishers?
I think for marketers and brands that are still heavily dependent on third-party cookies, while I do say that I think we're placing a little bit too much emphasis on third-party cookies, they do play a role, but I don't think they play such a significant role that we need to be really scared of. I think we need to kind of balance out the reaction to the disappearance of third-party cookies. It does have an impact, but not that the earth is going to shake because they disappear. So I think, in the evolution of personalization, right, we're all on a holy grail search for personalization. And because the more personal we can get in our messages, the more conversion rates that the business will see, right? That's just a simple truth. And the more generic it is, the lower the conversion rates are. So the question, therefore, is what is the best way to do personalization? I mean, so we started, I think, 20, 25 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, with a very simple personalization, which just said, Dear Vishal, right? It was called mail merge, if any one of you remember. Mail merge was the very first step towards personalization, where instead of reading Dear Customer, the email would start with Dear Vishal. But the rest of the text was pretty much the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Today, with the help of a CDP, we can not only change the name to be specific, we also have an opportunity with a little bit of assistance with AI to actually write the email unique for each customer. We are not there yet, but that is a possibility not too far in the future. So where does CDP play in the role? So CDP can help us understand who is this persona that needs to be messaged to, or where an ad needs to be delivered. What is the context of that? What is the relevance of that audience? And therefore give us a much more enriched direction to be able to engage the customer. I think therefore CDP is the intervention along the way of personalization.
No, interesting, because frankly, internally, we also kind of follow a similar philosophy. We kind of term it as the first principles of marketing, which is to say that the more you know about a customer, the more relevant and more contextual you are able to be as part of any engagement or interactions you have with them. So completely relate with that point there. In one of the previous questions, you also spoke briefly about the potential impact of, let's say, something like a GDPR or CCPA would have here. So could you elaborate a bit on that as well, in terms of whether you believe this kind of a move may, let's say, by kind of moving the onus of maintaining the customer's identity from the brand to the first party data owner or the ad exchange in this example, would that reduce the liability for the marketer, or would it just kind of complicate life further?
So let me break that down into a couple of things. So I believe, and it is my belief, that most corporations, whether they're Indian or global, I think are inherently good corporates. I don't think any corporate starts out to say, I want to exploit my customers. Right? So they will put in place necessary cybersecurity systems in place to be able to protect us, not because there's a government vote, because they're good corporate systems. However, the corporates that are a little bit on the fence of should I invest, should I not invest, should I take that money and put it somewhere else, I think the government rule policy insisting on privacy, I think helps make the case stronger for companies who are not so convinced of doing it to do so. Then, of course, you have rogue elements, right? You have rogue corporates. I would tend to think most of them probably are SME, not really large enterprises who are under the radar, multiple radars. So to escape, I think, is not so easy. And I think, is it a deterrence to them? To some of them, I'm sure. Some of them who have aspirations to grow, to raise capital, to go to the stock market, I think they would definitely be willing to adopt. And obviously, in any business, there are rogue elements that don't care about the law. So I think that's what it does. But what is the real question here, right? Is it, are we following the law is the question, or are we truly able to protect the privacy of the customer or the consumer is the question. And I think the real question is, can you protect my identity is the question, right? And I have a very simple answer for that. If you step out of your house onto the street, don't complain if people see you. Because you are stepped out of your house, right? You are in the public domain. The moment you're on the street, you cannot say, oh, that guy saw me, this guy saw me. You are on the street. People are bound to see you. So the internet is one such, it's like a road. Once you get onto the road, privacy is something you can attempt, but it is not guaranteed. No company, no cybersecurity software platform can guarantee 100% privacy. It just does not exist. And that's the reality I think most people, I think, have understood. I think people intuitively understand that privacy is a myth, but they must do what they can to protect it, which is why you don't see huge backlash from citizens when they read news about this bank's data, there was a data theft in this bank, or a data theft somewhere else. You don't see people going up in arms. They do protest and stuff, but then it's not like what's happening in US, for example, Black Lives Matter. But if you look at what's happening with that, there's a huge uproar. Have you seen such uproar about, or the environmental uproar, right? No, not yet, because I think people kind of understand that there is a line where it's not possible, despite good intentions of the government and the companies, to protect privacy. The other one I just want to add, right? So people are also willing to give up privacy, right, in exchange for some value. So if you look at Spotify as an example, you can get a free stream of songs if you're willing to subscribe to advertising.
Yeah.
So you're willing to trade, right? So people understand the value equation. If I don't want to pay, then I must be willing to give up something. And I think that's an equation. I think people, by now, this is a fairly old model.
Yeah.
By now understand that.
Absolutely. And I think with this might just kind of become a little more overt than it previously maybe was.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So actually, just I believe only have like a minute or so to go. So in closing, if you would maybe have any, let's say, advice to the marketeers on the call today.
Yeah, my advice to my fellow marketeers is don't get distracted by third-party cookies, because third-party cookies is a symptom of the problem. The problem is not third-party cookies. The problem is personalization. So focus on how you want to achieve that outcome. Do consider a CDP. I'm not saying that because I'm speaking in a FirstHive session. I would say that irrespective. And we made this decision much before we met FirstHive, and FirstHive is a result of that decision of needing to have a CDP. So have a strategy of having a persona segmentation. Figure out what platform you think can best serve that, and don't get distracted by this third-party nonsense. Right? It should not matter in the short term. 2 years is, I think it's 18 months to. In any case, Apple and Firefox have already moved in that direction. So don't get too distracted by it.
Great. So for all the folks on the call, if you have any questions, you have the chat box right below in the Q&A tab. Just click on that, type in your question, and we'll have Vaasu kind of respond to that. We have one question which has come in so far, which is from Mr. Om Singh, asking, are third-party cookies inherently a security risk?
Most third-party, no. So the direct answer is no. Why? Because when you install services on your, let's say, website as an example, let's say you have a like button from Facebook you have integrated on your website, or a comments box from Discuss, right? That's one of the many services. Or you have tags coming in from Google Analytics or tags from Adobe. Those tags are talking to the servers without any intervention, right? Because what is a first-party cookie? When you visit a site, you are pinging a server to deliver a page to your browser. So when that server sends a page to load on your browser, they're also sending a cookie. So that's first-party cookie. You've asked for it. But in these cases, you're not asking for these cookies. So there's a constant dialogue happening with all the services that you have used to power your app or used to power your website. So you already provided for security when you've installed those tags, for example, or some kind of a comments button service, or even a chat box. If you have a chat box service, that's obviously a service that you bought from someone. And they're talking to each other all the time. So that's why these third-party cookies come in through the back door. We're not actively asking for it, but they start to come in. So no, there's no security threat.
Right. Great. Any other questions? We'll maybe just wait for a minute.
Sure.
So if there are no questions from the folks on the call, maybe I'll ask, kind of take the opportunity to ask one here. If you could maybe shed a little light on, you kind of mentioned you were mobile first. So from that perspective, what does your existing marketing stack look like? If you could maybe speak a bit about that. And how did you kind of arrive at that?
So our objective was to have enriched personas. That was our objective, our outcome. So we then decided how best to achieve personalized personas, because then we wanted to do targeted media and we wanted to do targeted messages as the outcomes, right? So we then started to say, okay, let's start with analytics. So we have Adobe Analytics, the full suite, to be able to garner all the web analytics data. We have CRM, which is still under discussion, so I won't reveal the name. This is a marketing CRM. I know CRM is like a kitchen sink. It means everything to everyone, but we're specific. This is a marketing CRM, not a sales CRM, not a call center CRM. Again, that's a different CRM. This is a marketing CRM. So that is a gap that we're currently filling. Then we have on-site personalization using Adobe Target. It's on-site only, it's not off-site. And then we have FirstHive CDP. We have a couple of other bells and whistles in the consideration to fill our stack. But I think it's a little bit too early to talk about the other elements of that. But we have the key components, which is the analytics, CDP plus marketing, email, SMS automation, along with some on-site personalization as of now.
All right. I have one more question here, which is how would acquisition campaigns run in the future? Because this move to kind of deprecate the third-party cookies may render features like lookalike and similar to not be an option anymore.
Acquisition marketing is a bit of unknown depth, right? So it's a tricky place. There are two, broadly speaking, there are two ways of doing acquisition marketing. If you're a great brand, all you have to do is keep doing what you're doing because people are coming to you, right? Because of who you are, right? So Apple is a terrific example where you don't have to spend a lot of money to get people to come to you. You just have to figure out what they're looking for and offer the right product, but they're willing to buy from you. That's why they've come to you. Now you got the weak brands where people are not congregating, like insurance, not Royal Sundaram, but any insurance brand typically is the industry is not sought after. So we have problems of people knocking on our door. So for people like us, we need to find the right context in terms of, so for example, if you're buying a car, or you're buying a used car, or you're buying a two-wheeler, or you're getting married, or you've had a baby. So I think for us, we look for signals. So we do signal-based acquisition because the context and the relevance have to be equally high. And then we can expect to convert. So where does the CDP can help us? If we can help us by bringing those signals together. Most people use Facebook to post a baby picture or a pregnant, I'm about to, my due date is, that kind of stuff. And be able to pull that data from a Facebook, that signal, put it into a persona and pop up an action saying, these moms are likely to deliver in the next 3 months. And then that allows us to say, okay, so that is a micro segment. Now let's go create some creative messaging and buy some media against it. Now with that media, if you have the emails, which our CDP will know, we can send them emails or SMSs, or if it's relevant, we can do it through paid media, through the CDP or otherwise. So I think that's where acquisition will work better if the relevance and the context need to be equally high.
Got it. I have another question here, which is how has the way you use your MarTech stack changed during this period of slowdown?
A slowdown has been only about 2.5 months. So honestly speaking, not much because our MarTech journey stack is about 3 months old. It took a while since I joined to be able to go through RFPs, talk to different platforms, figure out who can fit, who can work with each other, who talks to each other. So to answer you, not much, because we're not completely mature in our MarTech capability as of
now. Got it. We have another question here from Mr. Narayanan. What will be the role of DMP and publishers moving ahead?
So DMP is an interesting question. We've evaluated DMP. I think DMP in India, relative to other markets in Asia, is still a weak play. It's not a compelling offering. Why am I saying that? In order for a DMP to be very powerful, you need to have first-party data, of course your own, of course you have access to your own data. Second-party data, which often is available, but it's mired in compliance to get that from another party. And then third-party data, again, is very suspect. We don't have clean third-party databases. For example, in our case, we try to get RTO data. Okay. And there are sources that sell RTO data, but we found out from some preliminary testing that we've done, the data integrity is very low. So we don't have good database sources to be able to make a DMP work better. Right? So DMP can still work on first party, second party. You don't need third party data. if you can get a good, high quality second party data to work with you, along with a CDP, and I think that would give you a very good audience segmentation in terms of high potentials for conversion or for engagement. The second part of the question is?
The second part of the question basically is what is the role of publishers as we move ahead? The first part was DM.
Yeah, I think publishers, I think largely will get impacted by the lack of third-party cookies. Because, if you're not GAFA, you were sneaking in through the back door. So for example, if you have Yahoo email, Yahoo has diminished over the years, while the traffic still is considerably high in a lot of markets around the world. But that's mostly due to its old email system. So if you have people above 50 today, most of those people still have a Yahoo email. So Yahoo gets a lot of its third-party cookies through its email because a lot of people don't go to the Yahoo news page any longer. In the US, of course, they go to Yahoo Finance, which is a very powerful publisher platform in itself. That's how Yahoo still gets away with a lot of. Now, Yahoo, for example, will suffer for lack of that third-party sources. Microsoft has just refreshed their browser. And if anyone's getting the 20 May update of Windows 10, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of third-party cookies lying in that browser as well. So you might be using Chrome, but Microsoft has placed all these third-party cookies right on your laptop or your desktop or on your device to be able to figure out what you're up to, even if you're not using them as a primary source as a browser. So those are the kind of things that are going to happen.
All right. And I know we are out of time, but I have two questions which are a little similar. One kind of looks at asking what's the dependency on, okay, are you then looking to reduce your dependency on media buying channels like Google? And the second one also talks similar about Facebook and Google will still have rich data. How will you go about in working with direct publishers like big news sites?
I think the dependency on Google for somebody who is dependent on acquisition will not go down, right? Because BFSI is notoriously famous for performance marketing because we're always in an acquisition game. Because we're a low engagement category. We're not like a car or a fashion brand where people are in love with the brand or Apple, right? So we need to fight. So Google will always, however, if we play our content game right, and if we can increase our organic traffic right, we can over a period of time cut our investments in Google. But that's a transition journey that we've just begun. So yeah, our target in 3 years is to cut our spends on Google performance marketing by 20 to 30%.
Got it. I have the last two questions here. One is there a minimum data volume or minimum data size that you believe is required for a CDP? This is by an anonymous attendee.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you can have one data point and expect to have a segmentation. I would think probably 1,000. You have 1,000 to start with. I think that's a decent number to get started with. But the whole point of having a CDP is you need to.
I think some challenge there.
That's when it then a CDP will not be so relevant. So that's what you need to figure out. Do you really need a CDP? If your customers are going to run in millions, then definitely go for a CDP.
All right. And the last question for the day here, how do you see the interplay of automation tools potentially with CDPs in terms of overlap versus complementary capabilities?
I think the shift that we've seen in automation, now we say marketing automation, which actually is the wrong term. It's email and SMS automation. I don't think marketing in the full sense actually has ever been automated. So email and SMS automation used to be linked to CRM platforms. The trend now is the same email and SMS automation is now being linked to CDP. So that's a transformation that we're beginning to see. And simply because the CDP has better understanding of the customer than a CRM platform. CRM platform uses a blind database. It just names, at best, maybe some cities, maybe some demographics at best, and then you say based on age this and this city, send off this email. That's very rudimentary segmentation. I think what CDP offers is a much richer segmentation opportunity. So that is a shift that we've seen, right? So linked to CRM now being linked to CDP.
All right. I think that's all the time we have today. So thank you so much, Vaasu, for kind of spending your morning with us today. And for all the attendees on the call, if there are any further questions, feel free to drop a line at marketing@firsthive.com. That's marketing@firsthive.com. And we will anyways be sending you a recording of this webinar that we had today as part of your email ID. So thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, audience. We had a great time. We will come back to you soon with another power webinar from FirstHive. Thank you.